Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome once again to Thank Furlough. It's Friday. It's episode number 164, and we are rattling through these episodes, and it's quite a jam-packed day today. Now, we don't have Jackie Mount with us. Jackie is on holiday this week, although I presume she's going to be listening in because she likes to pick me up whenever I do anything wrong. Very competitive. But I do have some excellent stand-ins for today. We've got a couple of topics to cover, and we have with us Esther Petronovich, who is our latest recruit to our team of experts. Esther is expert on many things, but particularly tax, so that will come in later. Hello, Esther. Hi, nice to see you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I always love talking about tax, for sure.
Good. Well, I spoke to Esther the other night, and she definitely likes to talk. So I've said I might have to rein her in on occasions because I'm the one that gets to talk all this on a Friday. And our guest, the first guest that we'll be talking to today, is actually Bill Dodwell, who is a returning guest and a very welcome returning guest. Bill is the Director of Tax at the Office for Tax Simplification. Good afternoon, Bill.
Hello, and thank you very much for inviting me. I too like to talk about tax.
Good. You're the Director of Tax at the Office of Tax Simplification. Mm-hmm. What do the other directors do then? Because surely everything is tax. Anyway.
We're a small office. We have an independent board. We're the independent advisor to government on tax simplification. And there's about a dozen of us who work on our projects. And we have an largely independent board chaired by a lady called Catherine Kearns with 4 other board members, plus representatives from HMRC and the Treasury. So right. That's what we're about.
Well, you are independent, but your email says .gov.uk. So we always tip our cap when speaking to you. So that's good. Now, I mentioned just before we came on, that your reports are a bit like buses, none and then all of a sudden 2 come along at once. And I see you've done a lot, but there are 2 that interested us particularly. And for those of you, just to break in very briefly there, we now also have Peter Stewart with us. Peter, most of you will know, is our Director of Learning and Skills within ICB. And we're going to be talking to you later about the big opportunity facing ICB bookkeepers that Peter is going to help you sail through without any problem. So, Bill, just to talk about your 2 reports again, the first one that we, I think it's actually the latest one, but the one that we helped contribute to, and most of our members were asked for their suggestions, is this thorny question of when is a year end helpful to everybody. Now, you might, if you know, I don't want to put you on the spot, but why on earth was it such a strange date in the first place? And I gather at the moment, the first suggestion is it goes back to the end of March, which is quarter day, and therefore links in with a lot of other things. But you have been very out there in suggesting why not go for calendar year. So perhaps you'd like to give us a quick background and tell us what you're up to.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you very much indeed for that. Back in 1582, a few years probably before all of us were up and running in tax, Pope Gregory adopted the Gregorian calendar. It replaced the Julian one. And the reason was that the Julian calendar had a little bit too much in it, and so you ended up, Easter kept slipping forward and forward in the year, and that of course didn't suit the Pope at all well. So he adopted the Gregorian calendar, and when they did that, they made an adjustment of 10 days essentially to reset, to catch up, as if they'd used the Gregorian calendar for the previous 1300 years. It took the UK nearly 200 years to adopt this modern idea of an accurate calendar. We adopted it in, I think, 1752, by which time the adjustment had become 11 days. And at the time, the tax year was 25th of March, which some people will recognize as one of the quarter days for payment of rental. And in order not to lose that time, about 6 years later, Parliament decided that the tax year would end on the 5th of April. So we added our 11 days in at that stage. And that's how we've got the 5th of April. And the real question is, given that the UK and the Isle of Man are the only two jurisdictions we can discover who used the 5th of April, is it time for us to catch that modernization bug and move on to something a bit more rational? And I'm sure, speaking to everyone in the bookkeeping, accounting world, we're all thinking we probably do our accounts to month ends, to calendar month ends, I imagine, and not to weird months ending on the 5th of something out there. So it's not really a helpful thing, particularly in the light of, you know, the increasing digitization of almost everything we do. Of course, business, and that's spreading not just from the biggest businesses we've seen, obviously, for decades, but it's spreading to the smallest businesses who are now digitizing. And if they haven't yet, they'll be asked to do so as part of the Making Tax Digital for Income Tax coming in a couple of years' time. But as part of that, you know, we need digital accounting systems. We also find that many of us may have some form of investment, whether it's in a bank or with an investment platform. We'll get a statement. You know, almost all those statements are done to a month end or a calendar end or something like that. And it's just a much easier concept for everyone to understand, and it fits much more naturally with providing something useful for all of us, whether we're in business or whether, you know, we're thinking of our regular family and, you know, general affairs more generally. If, you know, like me, you earn a salary, we always think of how much do you earn each month. And we're, funnily enough, thinking about that again to a calendar month generally. So that's the sort of why. And, you know, there's a few more. Once you've decided that it'd be really be a good idea to have a tax year that ended up with a calendar month end, or indeed followed the calendar year and ended on 31st December, you have to ask, you know, which one would you go for? Now, given that the individual tax year is 5th April, and given that the UK government financial year, if you like, is 31st March, you can see the easiest thing is to make a 5-day adjustment and flip us on to 31st March. And that wouldn't be a bad thing at all. However, you then have to ask the question, so what does everyone else do? And 16 out of the 19 G20 countries use 31st December. The notorious holdouts are India with 31st March, South Africa, I think, with 28th of or 29th of February. How did they get that weird one? And Australia, which has 30th of June. But everyone else is 31st December. And there's lots of countries outside the G20 which have 31st December. You know, the other two crown dependencies, Guernsey and Jersey, saw the light many years ago and adopted 31st December themselves as their year end. So when all these other countries are doing it, and when we're seeing an explosion in exchange of information and doing business cross-border, there's a clear benefit, if you like, in going with the flow and having something that allows that information exchange to match up to something that individual taxpayers can understand and reconcile straightforwardly to their tax affairs. You know, we now operate in a world where the internet essentially allows the tiniest business you can imagine to sell its services you know, internationally. And that's a great thing. It's opened up new markets. It's also opened up, you know, domestic markets, but one's nowhere near where that small business happens to be. And all of that is facilitated by platforms. And what we're moving to is not just the UK, but all the OECD countries are going to be asking those platforms to provide details of the you know, the services provided, who's doing it, the amounts they earn, and that sort of thing, provide that to tax authorities. Now, if you're in that sort of world, and we definitely are, then we need to ask, so what's the best date? And the answer is the way that that information exchange is going to be done is by reference to 31st December. It will be so much easier for that micro business when they get their statement from the platform that says in, calendar 2025, you have earned £12,007. And that same information then goes to the UK tax authority, or indeed the Belgian one, and so on and so forth. And everyone can just reconcile that much more straightforwardly. It's a real help, we think, for individual taxpayers. So that's the advantage of 31st December. But it's a bigger change for the UK because we've been moving from, we'd probably have to move our country's financial year from 31st March to 31st December. And that sort of brings me on. So, given it all sounds really obvious that we shouldn't just use 5th of April, why are we still stuck here? And the answer is the cost of change.
Actually, Bill, I noticed that. I mean, one of the big things in the report is that the cost of change, and I've seen a lot of people complaining about this. I mean, obviously, we expect the accountants to have a bit of a bellyache because they don't want to change anything, basically. Sorry to all accountants listening. And bookkeepers are a little bit more flexible because we do everything. What they do once a year, we do 12 times a year. So that's the way we are. Just explain, how can it be so costly to move 5 days back?
Well, let me just start with one thing before I answer that, which is that there have been quite a number of surveys carried out, and we've obviously, as part of work, have talked to lots and lots of people, and I would say that there's a very clear majority in favour of change, but it's sort of split between 31st March and 31st December. But something like 3/4 of those would favour a change away from 5th of April, and then losing that choice. So why is it costly? The answer in the main is because of systems. Instead of having systems which report our payroll and our state pension and lots of other things through to the 5th of April, we'd need to change all those systems so that they're reported to 31st March or indeed to 31st December. And getting that right would be quite a big effort. There are also lots of legacy systems, and those exist not only in government, but in the private sector. We found that, there are some very large payroll providers out there who use, what you might usefully call a legacy system, something pretty old, which works as it does at the moment. But if you wanted to make it to change to produce, a 360-day year and then a 365-day year, or something like a 274-day year and then a 365-day year, that would require potentially an awful lot of programming and testing, and ideally would best be done when those systems had moved forward onto something more modern. So it's really the problem is making sure that everything hangs together. If you move to 31st December, which we think overall has some more benefits, you have more problems. The devolved administrations suddenly need to get involved because you might affect their, how they run their finances. Public spending would be affected. Currently, that's on a sort of 1st April to 31st March year. If you had a 9-month year and then a 12-month year, you'd have to make adjustments, and you'd probably change the accounting dates for, bodies such as the NHS, local authorities, quite a lot of academy schools and all that sort of thing. So there would be a fair bit to plan for and to change. And that's why we say that that's really where the costs of it come from. There are potentially a few tax costs in the sense of money might be deferred a bit. Yeah. But in the main, it's working out, it's actually getting the technology and the systems to up and run and getting the legislation to change. You wouldn't believe how many times 5th of April or 6th of April actually appear hard-coded into the legislation. So all that would need to be altered as well.
I think we all began to realize how short legislation was when we came to the beginning of COVID and everything had to be debated. And we were all sitting here thinking, well, you're government, don't you just say do it? Apparently not. There has to be reason, it has to be debated, and we have to listen to at least a 300 and some odd different views on it and everything else. So that's good. Of course, it is a problem for government. It's going to be a problem for everybody. But I have to say, one other person that's going to have a terrible problem without the outcome, a continuing problem, is Peter, because in our exams department, we're always stuck with training people on the 2019-2020 year. By the time they get to their qualification, it's the 2020-21 year. And then, do we do them a top up? Do we leave it up to them to sort of get somewhere and read up and catch up? And Peter, it's the same with payroll. We do have a bit of a mess always at the crossover and the handover period, don't we?
Yeah, and I don't think there is a single accountant who has ever qualified having done an exam in the tax that they would be doing behind the desk in the office, which is there is a cycle that you have the budget. So everyone then learns what's going to happen to the tax rates and the thresholds and allowances and so on. But then the text publishers, the learning providers, have to design courses, have to write material. So there's always going to be a lag. And then, of course, people have got to start using those books and go to those courses. So there's a few more weeks or months before they're exam ready. So we're gradually working towards having a better overlap than we have had in years gone by. But it is unavoidable, and it's also quite hard to say to somebody in a learning world that, okay, you started your study in January and you were using the 2020/21 Finance Act, and you had work and you had family matters to take care of and but we've changed the exam, so you have to do the 21/22. You can't, that's unfair. So there's a balance to be struck, and yeah,
I remember one of the problems we had very early on, when I always see things very simply. So I burst out and say, we should be doing this, as everybody will tell you. But I said, well, this is great. What we need, and this was actually over when VAT returns went digital. And I said, great, we'll replicate the VAT return. And that's great. And they said, oh, yes, but what happens with it once they've done it? I said, well, that can come to us. We'll set up an Icb receptacle that will mark their result. And somebody at HMRC got wind of this and said, now that could be used as a false taxation thing. So in the end, the lawyers flew at us, and we decided, well, we better not do that, because they might think we're setting up a parallel tax system or something or other. So anyway, those things. Bill, the other report that came out recently, you've alluded to it already, and that is this sharing of data. Mm-hmm. And I know that either thrills people or frightens the living bejeebers out of them, because, who's got my data, and do I actually want everybody to know how much pension I'm getting or how much I'm getting from my dividends or something or other. I can see the benefit. And, our office in Australia is dealing at the moment with e-invoicing. Yes. Where a copy of your invoice sort of goes immediately via government, so they know what you're selling. It doesn't help with the grey economy or whatever it's called nowadays, but certainly with everything else. And we're also concerned that, knowing as we do as bookkeepers how many things the client gets wrong when they give it to us that we then have to put right. Yep. Why do we think that a piece of software is going to be able to sort all this out? Or is government taking a calculated gamble that it's going to lose a percentage, but it might be a slightly smaller percentage than they're losing now?
No, I don't think it's either of those. And firstly, the sort of data sharing we're talking about is basically involving your bank, your building society, the pension company you make pension contributions to, and potentially your investment manager or investment platform providing dividend information. And what we're suggesting is that instead of the bank simply telling you, well, Bill, you've earned, £1,107 in interest this year, and you then have to keep that record and tell HMRC, of course, that the bank not only tells you, but tells HMRC directly. And HMRC's systems are set up to receive that data from the bank, feed it directly into your new single customer account, an online account, and you, the taxpayer, will be able to see that in there, and it will save you having to go and dig out the bit of paper or the email or whatever it is and do that. But equally, you know, it'll be your interest. You'll have to check that indeed you do recognize that you had an account with Barclays Bank and it's paid you this amount of interest. You'll have to do all of that. But it's an easier process overall, is our surmise. What we are not looking at is extra information compared to what HMRC currently receives today. So we're definitely not looking at transaction level information, which is what a small number of countries have already done and others have in mind for VAT in particular. We're definitely not looking at that. We're simply looking at, okay, we do have these lists of, you know, this particular study was all about essentially investment income, savings income, and pension contributions, and possibly gift aid. We do have all of that. What's the easiest way of getting that information to HMRC? Now, one of the big things that you would need is a unique identifier. Because simply saying this is Bill Dodwell, or even of this address, is not guaranteed to find the right person. And currently, people may or may not know this, banks and building societies already provide interest information to HMRC, but there isn't a unique identifier. And the result is that it takes weeks and weeks for HMRC to attempt to match it to individual accounts. And there's a bunch of, you know, significant amount that can't really be matched to accounts at all. So finding a unique identifier, we think the favorite would be the national insurance number, but it's not the only possibility. Finding that unique identifier is the key essentially for making computer programs work, in the sense of that should be me because I'm identified by this little code, and that will feed easily into that single customer account. So final thing, the single customer account is something that's coming. It is a merger of the online personal tax account and business tax account, and you know, should be adding some additional functionality as well. And we see this very much as the sort of hub for, you know, taxpayer and HMRC communication. Taxpayers tell HMRC stuff, HMRC tell taxpayers stuff, and we all get it through that single online customer account. A bit like, you know, the bank app that you may or may not have on your phone, which allows you to make payments, check what's going on, all that sort of thing with your bank. Something similar with HMRC, with plenty of facilities in it and, you know, lots of functionality built in.
Right, thank you for that, Bill. I know you jumped in at last minute notice onto this, and you are required elsewhere shortly, so please just disappear when you need to. But a couple of points, if I might, just before you do go. Digitalization. It's supposed to be the panacea for all our ills, but the big report that came out yesterday and has been seized upon today by CIOT, ICAW, and by ICB, the estimated tax gap has jumped up to 35 billion. Now, a couple of things they say in there. Most of that problem is with small businesses. I'm not surprised. Small businesses, you know, in the main, do their own thing. We've got legal misinterpretation, I think, was 5 billion. So that's your tax simplification shot through the foot for a start. Tax avoidance, 1.5 billion, up.
But substantially down.
That's a bit of success, because
it is.
Got that down from 4.7 billion in 2005-06. So, you know, I like to think we played a part in that. But
I think, honestly, I agree with you. And I think, you know, everybody who supports business, bookkeepers, accountants, tax advisors, you know, they've all, together with business attitudes as well, all of that has led to that avoidance gap coming down.
Yeah. And one thing just before we came out, we were talking about, I was having my bit of belly aching in that HMRC seems to have misunderstood how small businesses run their affairs. And they've been telling us that in future, if you've got a tax advisor, a bookkeeper and an accountant, only one of those can submit your tax for you. Now, I'm not sure if you're willing to say this on air, but you did say that you've heard rumblings that all of the representations we've been making to all and sundry and anybody we know, including mothers, uncles and aunties, might be having an effect.
I think that's right. I've not seen any form of public announcement of this, but I'm fully expecting that the systems will be capable of accepting inputs from more than one agent for the taxpayer. I think it's absolutely essential they should be able to do that, because if you think of the various potential players here, you've got the self-employed business that may well have a bookkeeper, and why wouldn't you ask the bookkeeper to do the keep the digital records and do the quarterly uploads? The same individual might have a rental business, while they might have a managing agent. Why wouldn't you ask that managing agent to keep the digital records and do the quarterly uploads? And then the person might have an overall tax advisor, tax agent, who would pull everything together with possibly, employment income, dividends, something that is, pension contributions, something that isn't necessarily part of the business or the rental, and, finalize the tax return. So for me, multiple agents have always been a fundamental part of how we operate. And I think that message is getting through, and I'm optimistic we will see some positive announcements. Well,
I'm pleased to hear that, Bill. I mean, some of the HMRC people that we talked to about this originally were like rabbits in the headlights. Really? People have more than one advisor? So, look, considering you're dealing with all the tax, you should know more about where it comes from, or at least who is responsible for making sure you get it. Because I think the other thing is that, white van man or woman, as I refer to them, white van person, has been seduced over the last couple of years by the idea that they can do everything themselves with a piece of software. Now, what we're finding is that actually it is making them think more about getting their bills out quickly, about getting them out correctly. So that's a major step forward. But doing something with it once they've done that is a bit beyond most small businesses, either in terms of ability or even just time. So, I think there is scope for to get us all in there. And
I completely agree with you. And I think the idea, if you're in business, you're there because you've got a business idea, you've got something you're good at doing. And you're not necessarily a tax person, you're not necessarily an accountant or a bookkeeper. We all have specializations today. And there's no question that somebody with a specialization will do something so much better than somebody without. I have family members who are in business. It won't surprise you to discover that they do the business and I do the tax and accounting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also that the time has come to be honest with people. I mean, we say to our members, look, you are there to service micro businesses, small businesses, anything at medium and above, really, you shouldn't even get involved with. And know your place, know what you're doing, but get that right. And the 95% of all businesses are micro and small. So therefore, it's quite a market to go for. Don't worry about everybody else's problems. Let them get on with it. But the idea, as soon as somebody sets up a small business selling something, I must talk to an accountant. Hopefully, we're getting to the stage where people will say, I need the best person for my small business, and that is probably going to be a bookkeeper. And that's our job. If people don't get that message, I suppose it is our fault. But I was very interested in your preamble there, talking about the various calendars that the Pope put his foot down on his dates. And we, of course, recognize Luca Pacioli as the father of modern accounting. And I understand that it was the Pope who said, look, I'm not getting my money. Can you help these people come up with a better accounting system? And lo and behold, double entry bookkeeping, if not invented, was certainly explained properly. So we have a lot to thank the Pope for in many ways.
Indeed we do.
I'll
And on
leave
that
it.
happy note, I need to leave you. So thank you very much indeed for inviting me to the call.
Great
And
of
I
you to
look
come on,
forward to
Bill.
speaking
Thank you
at
very much.
one of your events in the future. Thank you again.
You're coming to Summit, I gather. You're a speaker
I am
at Summit,
and I'm looking
you will
forward to
have the
that.
benefit of your knowledge there again. So we look forward to that.
Thanks again. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, Bill.
Bye.
So Esther, there we are. We have it all. You're our resident tax person. All this stuff has really hit the fan yesterday and today. The huge gaps. You're dealing with tax on a regular basis. You don't only teach it, you do it. Hopefully you pay it. I think you do. And also you mentor people. So I think this is actually a major opportunity for qualified, and I do stress qualified bookkeepers like ICB bookkeepers. What is it that you enjoy about tax? Because it's not the easiest subject.
You are absolutely correct. So tax is very, very complex, but that's exactly what I like about it, that you think about effects and after effects, what do you have to do, and help those businesses and sole traders and small companies to make the right decision for them. So it is not enough to just learn about tax. You actually have to be able to apply it, and every business is different, and that's what I like about tax, that it is rarely the same for two different basically businesses. So it gives a variety, if you like.
Yeah, Peter, you've been with us for 2 years now. 2 years, only the day before yesterday, wasn't it? So good to have you with us. And one of the thorny little things you've had to deal with is the self-assessment tax examination. We've added in a few bits to make it a 2-level qualification, mainly capital gains tax and things like this, because I'm sure you now agree you're actually a qualified accountant, but we still allowed you inside the camp. But the problem with our members is that as soon as you give them A, B, and C, they start doing D. So we end up ever encroaching upon more and more things. But I think the self-assessment tax is the bookkeeper's tax bit to begin with, isn't it? We'll talk about corporation tax in a minute, but SAT is a necessary thing for all bookkeepers, we think.
Yes. I mean, necessary maybe isn't the right word for it, but it is. It's a very, very nice to have, and from what I hear from our members, they'll do a bookkeeping exercise for a client who will then say, now what about the tax? So they don't have to do it, but bookkeepers are in business for themselves. So they want to have a good relationship with their clients, and to be a one-stop shop service. Then being able to switch from bookkeeping to doing tax returns is a very obvious opportunity to build that business. And yeah, it works with the relationship that you have with the clients. But it's another string to the bow. And also, another thing in 2 years of working exclusively with bookkeepers is there's a tremendous thirst for knowledge. They know tax is out there. They know that it's a skill set that is closely linked to the bookkeeping. So why not top up the qualification with that? So there's a sort of 2 birds with 1 stone.
And I think the move towards digitalization means that, I know I oversimplify it by saying you're doing the work, so at the end of the day, you just press a button and it's done for you. I'm sounding like a software company, but no, it is a natural extension, isn't it? It's not as if you've then got to recreate the wheel. All of the information is there. You just then need to learn what to do with it to make it accurately transmitted onto HMRC.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably treading on Esther's toes by talking about this, but I think that the bookkeeping self-assessment tax module is very good at aiming at what most bookkeepers will come across. So there's not a huge conceptual link between the work that they do in keeping the books and the follow on to the tax. I mean, when I did some of my tax exams, it went into tax planning and it went into all sorts of strange tax laws and so on, because the accounting bodies like to fill up their syllabuses to present a tricky challenge. But as tends to happen with those sort of bigger qualifications, you end up doing stuff that from your workspace is entirely theoretical, and at least 60% of it you'll never put into practice, because there are tax advisors, tax planning experts, people doing sort of trust planning, etc., who do bespoke and specific qualifications. So you're absolutely right. It follows on directly what we've got with what people are doing, and at some point, everyone will come up and say, "Oh, well, one of my clients asked about this. That wasn't in my qualification." Now, we can't create a syllabus that covers everything and suits everything. Otherwise, we become a chartered institute of taxation, and I think we've got one of those already somewhere.
So I'm told.
Yeah,
I agree, and we've always said this: what is the dividing line between a bookkeeper and an accountant? And that's getting a thinner line. So I think if we define it by the size of company that can actually work well with a bookkeeper and get all they need from a bookkeeper, that's what it's about. But as soon as they want to start selling the company or buying an overseas operation or something like that, look, we're out of our depth. That's not what we're there for. Work with a firm of accountants and just keep doing the bookkeeping. So that's great. Yeah. I mean, Esther, you've done our exam, like all of our examinations and our tests and assessments, whatever the sexy word is for them nowadays, to stop you being frightened of them. They're very practical. I mean, we're not, like Peter says, trying to teach you how to do things which you're unlikely to come across. We tend to cover this very much from a day-to-day basic understanding thing. You've done it yourself. So, what do you think about our structures?
I do think that ICB is really geared towards what you actually do in practice and not this theory. So whenever I was involved with writing course materials, I always thought, so this is my experience. Oh, I remember that client. Oh, I remember what happened if that problem came up. So I really do think that ICB has a perfect set of qualification to attack the smallest businesses, sole traders, and also micro companies up to small companies, and provide that day-to-day bookkeeping and accounting and what we can do within our practice license or the taxation bit. So I do think that obscure points are definitely not needed, and when it comes up, every ICB member should seek or give that a problem to a certified accountant or a chartered taxation advisor for sure.
Yeah, and it's like everything that a bookkeeper does. You have to have that inner sense which says, "Oh, this is going a little bit beyond what I've done." I mean, it should be obvious if you've not done it, then But I like to think that our qualification is very practical, and as I say, that is the main part behind it. And I mean, I think the other good news, really, Peter, is that we have very strong support from our training providers. So you have the likes of Training Link, Ideal Schools that have understood the need for this. They've created courses around it. We've got our own books, etc. So it's not as if you've got to sit down and plow through the various taxation terminology and everything else. There are ways of getting to this. We've sort of made it that much easier. It's just a question. The biggest problem is going to be finding the time. But I think, we've given you all the tools to do the job. Is that right?
Yeah. It's made accessible partly because, the bookkeeper will be maybe not fluent, but will have a working knowledge of the language that is being used. So you're not coming from behind and starting from nowhere. So that the courses and the materials are all prepared with scenarios that a bookkeeper should be familiar with. And yeah, it's all funny language about disallowable expenses and so forth and so on that you don't immediately recognize. But the training providers provide us a strong helping hand, and with the support that tutors are there to deliver. I hesitate to say it. It's no harder really than doing bookkeeping. If bookkeepers think back to when they started learning about assets, liabilities, debits, credits, income, expenditure, capital, drawing, and all this sort of stuff, you started off and it was gobbledygook, and quickly you snapped into it. And because now you're working in the environment where these businesses or individuals have got a tax liability, I think there's more of a desire, more impetus for people to motor along with their studies, and we see equally good success rates in the SAT exam as we do in our bookkeeping exams.
Yeah. We then move on to our level 4, where we take in options, but one of those being corporation tax. Now, that's having a big take up at the moment, I gather.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, both. I mean, the self-assessment tax is there for the sole trader, for the self-employed sole trader, for the individual, the employed individual, and people working in partnerships. But as you mentioned, you said 97% of businesses are small, micro and small companies. So obviously bookkeepers are working with them through the core qualification. We get to the point of being able to prepare the accounts for a limited company. So then there's another transition to go on to the FRS 102, 105 submission of financial statements for those companies. And then the next step is, okay, so this is what we've done in the past year. Somebody's going to have to pay tax. Or hopefully all our clients are profitable, they pay our fees, and there's some money left over to pay as tax.
Yeah. One of the big things that I think came out of the report, I mentioned it to Bill earlier, was mistakes are costing 3.7 billion. I haven't actually looked at that in any more detail, because surely if it's a mistake and you know it's a mistake as HMRC, you go and tell them it's a mistake and therefore they then pay you. So I'm not quite sure why it disappears, or is this just an estimate? Not taking reasonable care, 6.7 billion. What's that? Adding up the columns wrong or what? I mean, there seem to be some easy hits there that HMRC, if they work more closely with the bookkeepers and said, because this is mainly small businesses, according to ICAW, there seems to be an easy way around this without necessarily tying everybody in ropes and red tape and all the rest of it, and costing small businesses loads of money. I mean, do you think we have a duty as ICB to try and get this across the government more effectively?
Well, I'll let Esther follow on from this. Sorry, Esther, and you'll correct everything that I say. But I think that it's somewhere where we have to draw the line that with a SAT or a corporation tax certificate, you're not a tax advisor. You are calculating the tax liability based upon the activity of the organization in the preceding year. But in there are things, and you can point out to a client to say, well, if you do that, that becomes an allowable expense. So you really should claim for it. So I don't know whether those oversights and omissions that you mentioned are possibly people who are incurring certain expenses in their business and not treating them correctly in the tax return, and therefore losing out on a tax allowance or overpaying their tax. That would be my guess on it. Esther, would that, tell me if I make no sense.
No, absolutely. What I think is that these mistakes, the majority will come from unqualified and uncertified persons carrying out of work. I have numerous clients coming over and realizing, oh my God, so you can actually claim for that. Oh, my previous bookkeeper or accountant has never mentioned this. So what I do think is it is essential that people do get the qualification, do get the knowledge, how they can help their clients, for sure. So that is something I think the origin of this missing thing.
We had a comment from one of our members recently that their previous advisor had not claimed for something, and they were told in writing, well, I'm not here to tell you how to run your business. I just do it from the accounts that you provide me with. So anyway, it's yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the advisor. I don't think government will ever have the appetite for saying everybody must use an advisor, because that's going a step too far. But I think that small businesses need to look at what they're doing. I mean, you know, how many times do we hear our bookkeepers saying, well, I'm getting £40 an hour, but the gardener's getting 50. You know, it's not particularly highly valued, any sort of accounting guidance, whether it's from an accountant or a bookkeeper. And a lot of people say they're the best advisors they've got, but they tend to forget that when it comes to the year end and looking at what they're going to put their fees up to or something like that. And I think it's important. I mean, one of the big things that I've noticed, the difference between bookkeepers and accountants, is bookkeepers say, I will make sure your books are correct. And I do still see accountants saying, you know, my fees will be covered, what I can save you in tax. Now, that might be true, but it sort of gives the impression, I think, to small businesses, oh, well, if I use them, they'll stop me having to pay tax, which is not actually true. You know, 99.9% of all bookkeeping and accounting advisors are there to follow the rule of law, but make sure you get everything that you're fully entitled to within it. So yeah. I think that, you know, that's really important. So Peter, anything big coming up in the future now with our exams and what have you? There was a hint of an annual test for people.
Yes, and that's something that we will be pushing ahead with. As I said when Bill was on the call, everyone qualifies with a set of tax tables and books that is out of date, and of course, to give the best value to your clients, you've got to keep yourself up to date. And I think it's something that we can do quite well and quite quickly, is to highlight as a sort of CPD component, if you like, to say these are the big changes that have gone through as we see them affecting your clients. So, you know, in recent years, how do you handle furlough payments? If that, I don't think that comes into self-assessment tax. It might do. I don't know. I am not a tax expert. The Finance Act that I completed my exams began with a 19, so it is it is really quite out of date.
Well,
I think
I can see a lot of the members already champing at the bit, saying, you know, how dare you? You know, I'm a bookkeeper. You told me I was the best. We are talking about short, sharp tests. We're not talking about you'll need 5 hours to do this exam, and we're not trying to throw people out. We're just trying to make sure, a bit like doctors, you know, that if you're keeping up with technology or you're keeping up with the way to do things now, that's good enough, isn't it? Really, that's all we're trying to do.
Yeah, and we know that every anyone who is selling tax services has to keep themselves up to date, or they're in trouble. They're in trouble with their clients. They're in trouble with HMRC. They could be in big trouble. So we know that has to be done, and I think it's a positive that you have a members body that is pointing you in the right direction of things to be updating yourself with. As a head of exams, I do have to say, everyone understands, whatever is examined will be learned, or will be attempt to be learned. So if you have a good exam or test, I won't say exam because exam makes it sound like a 2 or 3 hour exercise. But if you point out, you need to know how to do this, and there's 5 things, and we'll check it and certify it, and then you can put onto your website that I am 2021-22 certified.
Within reason, we are a friendly face. We are there to assist wherever possible, and I know, Peter, you probably, when you go to a party, you are way behind the estate agent and the traffic warden when explaining what they do for a living. So I'm fine. Esther,
I just lie. I say that I dive for pearls off Aruba and I wrestle alligators. That tends to work.
Right. Yes, I've met that particular member as well. Anyway, Esther, you have tutored, which I find, if you're standing in front of a classroom and everybody's looking at you and whether they've fallen asleep or they're texting or something like that, how do you cope with tutoring people that you're miles away from and you're doing this? I mean, Zoom now probably more so, but mainly by telephone. I mean, how do you get your undoubted enthusiasm across to these people? Because you have some pretty good results.
I think people see well from the email that I was 100% behind everyone to get that knowledge, and I always try to convey that knowledge and professional knowledge is not just power, but it gives you confidence, it gives you professional confidence in yourself, and that confidence is money. Because people tend to attracted to confidence, and when somebody is talking about tax or opportunities or even expenses, that okay, I save you this, I save you that, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, then I think that confidence is building and helping building that relationship with clients, and gives the credibility to an ICB member that yes, I can rely on this in this person. So I try to start this motivation early on, and give students the confidence that yes, you can do this, because everybody done that, so you can do it too. Just have to believe in yourself. So I think this motivation bit is what counts, and takes it far, the relationship.
Yeah, that's good. And I think sometimes the reason that we're looking at different ways of mentoring our members is that they lose that mentoring, that push, if you like, from their tutor, and all of a sudden they're running their own business, they're by themselves. And we're trying to continue that further so that they don't have this dip in enthusiasm before they then start to get the enthusiasm of their success. So we're getting towards the end of our program. So what I do need to do is just remind everybody it's a big month coming up in November. On the 1st of November, we have the Luca Awards. Now, Esther, you've won an award. I mean, winning a Luca Award, 2. Yeah, I do apologize. Yes, you've won 2 awards. It means something, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely.
And where are they? I can't see them. So. No, it's all right. I'm only pulling the leg.
They are actually downstairs and on display, for everybody to see it. It is an absolute pleasure, and not just justification or anything like that. You don't need to, you don't need other people tell you how good you are or how you know, others perceive you, but it does help your self, your confidence. You know that you are on the right track of providing that service or that motivation. And as a matter of fact, I've always regarded these tutor awards as a celebration of a professional community that bind it together. So students, ICB professionals, tutors, everybody to be together and get that sufficient knowledge to be able to provide that good service for the clients.
That's great. So I hope everybody's listening and realize that this could actually be a great mark of your professionalism as you move forward. A slightly different Luca this year, because it's our 25th anniversary that we're also celebrating on the 1st of November. They're going to be silver. I have to say silver in color. I said they should be hallmark silver till I realized how heavy they were and how much that was going to cost. So they look like real silver, but no, they're very shiny, they're bright, and they're different. So if you've already got two, like Esther, this one you can put in the middle because it'll be a different color. Or if you've got something like a dozen, like Gary Hupston and Training Link have got, you know, it'll look a bit of an odd one out, but you'll have to explain that when somebody asks. So anyway, now there are 2 weeks from today left to get your applications, your nominations in. So you can apply for yourself, you can get nominated, you can nominate somebody else. Just go onto the website, look up, it's all done online. You can put all of your information up, have a look at it. I would really, really urge any of you that think, well, I've done pretty well. You know, I've come through COVID, or I've come through my training, or I've been looking after, you know, the husband, the kids, the dogs, the cats, the cows, and I've managed to run a business, and I've now qualified to do my SAT. It's that sort of thing we want. It's very personal, ICB is, and, you know, we love a good story, and that's what wins out. And just remember that when you're doing your application, the more you give us to plow through, the better we like it. We don't get bored half the way through. We get excited and we get more involved in you and your business, or you and your profession. And that's what it's all about. So that's 2 weeks from today. So you still have time, but get those in, please. And, you know, hopefully on the 1st of November, you'll be coming up on stage to be presented with one of our silver Lucas. For those of you who want to come on the evening, even if you're not nominated, please come and join us. It's 25 years that we're celebrating, plus all of these major winners. And we will also be presenting some new companionships. And there's a special thing that we're doing. We're going to be doing something for those that have already been made companion, and particularly those, I think it was 7 companions that we elevated last year, but because of COVID, they had to do it at a distance. So we're hopefully going to do that on stage this time. So just so that you know, if you want to come, it's £149 plus VAT per person. Now that sounds expensive, or if you're in London, it probably won't. But it's a big night. It's very posh. We as always with anything ICB does, we put a lot into it. There's a fantastic meal. It's a top range meal, champagne on arrival, wines, everything that you could possibly. That's all included. And you're going to get to sit next to some of your peers, some people you may have heard of, some people you've not, some of our sponsors, some of our software companies, all sorts of people in there, some of the good and the great from the profession. It'd be a really good night. Now, already I've noticed that some of you are getting together in a group and coming down together, because actually, if you've got 5 or more people, you get a 10% discount off all the tickets. And if you get 10 people and fill a whole table, you get 15% off. And I know some of our members are already doing that, because, you know, that helps. Now, we're running this year at the Londoner. Now, the Londoner is a 5-star hotel. It's only just opened. It opened week last Monday, I think it was. Could have been last Monday. It's absolutely beautiful. It's really on the mark as far as being in the right place at the right time is concerned. We'll be one of the first ever conferences and dinners rather to be run from there. It's right on the corner of Leicester Square, so it's bang in the middle of London. It's at the heart of everything that buzzes all night in London. We've got hotels around there. We can give you a link to the hotels, and you know, so you don't have to pay Londoner rates, which I must admit are a bit eye-watering. But next door there's another hotel that you can just walk across to. There's one just behind, so we've got I think there's an Ibis, and there's all sorts of different hotels there, and it doesn't really matter as long as you put your posh gear on and just walk across. You know, keep your tiaras and your jewels in your pocket till you get inside the hotel, possibly, but nonetheless, it's going to be a fantastic night, and yeah, we're really looking forward to it. I'm sure it'll be great. The other thing to mention, obviously, is that the following week, that's week beginning the 8th, that is Global Bookkeeping Week. And that kicks off with our summit, which is on the Monday and Tuesday. Now, we've only got a limited number of the early bird tickets left. They've already gone. So this is, you know, 50% faster than last year. And that is £45 plus VAT for a ticket. Then you get open access to absolutely everything that goes on. And you don't have to come on the day. You don't have to sit through it all. You can load it down at any time afterwards. You can see it twice if you want to. But we're using the same platform that we used for the Inspire Tour and last year's summit, where there's a lot of social interaction as well. So you can see who else is listening in whilst you're listening in. You can go into meetup groups. And it's almost like being there. It's absolutely almost like being there. We haven't quite gone for a face-to-face this year, but so it is all like exactly like being there. Now, after, I think we've got 49 tickets left of our 500. After that, and we expect at least 2,000 people to be coming to this, but they'll all those will have to pay the higher rate if they don't get in the early bird, and that's 58 plus VAT. And if you are a non-member, very happy to see you there, but your prices are 58 for the early bird and 75 for the normal rate, and those are obviously both plus VAT. But again, I stress, we'd love to see you at the Luca Awards. We'd love to see you see you in inverted commas at the summit as well. So there is a lot going on at the moment, and you heard that Bill Dodwell is coming along, and you're talking as well, Esther, this time.
Yes,
Peter will be also talking, so I'm hoping they've got something else up their sleeve to talk about, because they haven't talked about it all today. But we've got a whole range of speakers. They're coming in bits and drabs as people confirm, and we get their slideshows and make sure it's good enough to go up. You can learn so much at Summit, and although for a lot of people a big part of Summit was meeting other bookkeepers and talking to them and meeting people for the first time, this virtual summit is as close as it gets. Importantly, a lot of people who have been very nervous about coming to their first summit last year really came in big numbers to our virtual summit, and they're already booking up again this year. People are saying, you know, I've got one lady who said the other day she's disabled. She didn't fancy coming into the middle of London. It worries her a lot, but now she's coming to a summit. She's absolutely over the moon. But we're getting stories like this all the time. It will be fun. If you are nervous about coming for the first time, even though it's virtual, we have a team of people that you can talk to, the Icb team. They're all absolutely fantastic. A couple of them have not been to Summit themselves before, but most of us have. We've been there for far too many years that we care to mention. And, you know, we're there to help you. It's all about joining the network. It's being part of the Icb family. And it's about seeing how other people approach being professional and how other people run their businesses or how they work for their employers. It's just interesting to get those vibes, because no two members are the same. And just to prove that point, Graham Shaw has said, "Hi, Gary, I must be the exception to your rule that bookkeepers shouldn't get involved with medium-sized companies, as the company I work for will turn over 30 million this year. ex-chair of the Greater Manchester branch. Hello, yeah, hello, Graham. Yes, there are always exceptions to the rule, and 30 million, that's a good size turnover, so congratulations on that. We do have a lot of our members who have companies with turnovers in the low millions, you know, and we've got a couple that are certainly in the tens of millions, but the majority of our members will be dealing with companies probably, you know, anywhere from £50,000 turnover at the very, very small end, right the way up to 2 to 3 million. And that's where the majority come. But don't worry, if you're a bookkeeper, as long as you stick to our standards and you hold our ethical and professional standards close to your heart, we're very happy to be there for you and to support you. And perhaps you should put yourself up for Employed Bookkeeper of the Year. How about that, Graham? There's a challenge. Okay, folks, so I think actually that is it for today. Now, one final thing is that next Friday is the final Thank Furlough It's Friday. I think the word furlough is hopefully banned to history for the foreseeable future. We don't know quite, you know, Boris is still threatening us, but we'll see. So for the moment, we're doing away with that. Now, we will still be here after that. We'll tell you more about that next week. So Jackie will be back for her swan song. And you know, as always, she'll be telling you the latest information about anything that's coming out of government, as well as doing her tax tutors and everything else. So with that, I hope you all have a great weekend. Thank you, Bill, although he's gone. Thank you. It was great to have Bill with us again. He's a great supporter of ICB. Love to see him there. Thank you, Esther. And thank you, Peter. Goodbye, all. See you next week. Don't forget, final one next week. See you soon.
See ya.